My name is Marcus, and 3 days ago at my grandmother's birthday party, my own brother called me a failure in front of 200 people. He said I was the disgrace of the family, a dead weight who had never achieved anything in life. The entire room fell silent. But what no one knew was that the man next to me, discreetly sipping champagne, was David Chen, CEO of TechVision Industries, an $8 billion company. And what he did in the next 5 minutes completely destroyed my brother's life and revealed a secret our family had kept hidden for 20 years. But before I continue telling my story and how it all happened, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to hear where you're from. Let me rewind a bit so you can understand how I arrived at that humiliating moment. I grew up in Boston, in a family that always valued appearances above all else. My father, Richard Sterling, built a good-grossing import company, and my mother, Patricia, cared more about what the neighbors thought than about her own children. My older brother, Jonathan, was always the favorite. Harvard at 18, MBA from Stanford, married a model, drove a Porsche. Me? I went to a state university, graduated with a degree in electrical engineering, and worked quietly for the last 10 years. The difference between Jonathan and me was always clear at family gatherings. He would arrive talking about his million-dollar contracts, trips to Dubai, dinners with politicians. I would arrive quietly, greet everyone, and sit in the corner. My mother always made a point of asking in front of everyone, "What about you, Marcus? Still in that technical job?" She knew I wasn't a technician. I was a senior engineer, but she deliberately distorted the facts to belittle me. Jonathan loved to tease me. At every Sunday lunch, he'd find a way to compare our lives. "Marcus, when are you going to buy a real house? That rented apartment is too small for a man your age." I was 32. He was 35 and acted like he owned the world. What no one in my family knew was that for the past 5 years, I'd been working on something revolutionary, an artificial intelligence system for energy management in commercial buildings. Patents filed, prototypes working, tests in 3 different cities, all in secret. I didn't tell anyone because I knew exactly what would happen. Jonathan would try to steal the idea or my father would try to take over. So I worked alone, late nights and weekends, investing every penny I had. And it was exactly this project that caught David Chen's attention. My grandmother's 90th birthday party took place at Rosewood Country Club, a fancy venue my mother chose to impress her friends. 200 guests, a live band, a 4-course menu, and imported flowers. My mother spent over $80,000 on the party. Jonathan arrived with his wife Caroline, all dressed up, greeting everyone like celebrities. I arrived alone, in a simple suit, and went straight to hug my grandmother. She was always the only person in the family who treated me with genuine respect. "Marcus, my dear, how are you?" She held my hand tightly. "You look tired." I was tired. I'd spent the last 3 weeks in intense meetings with David Chen's team, finalizing the final details of a deal that would change my life. But I couldn't tell her yet. "I'm fine, Grandma, just working hard." She smiled. "You've always been the hardest worker. Don't let anyone make you think otherwise." During dinner, I sat at a secluded table near the exit. That's when I saw an Asian man, around 50, sitting alone 2 tables away. He had graying hair on the sides, an impeccable gray suit, and a watch that looked like it cost more than my car. He was fiddling with his phone, looking bored with the whole party. I got up to get a drink at the bar and ended up sitting next to him. "Are these family parties always like this?" He spoke first with a slight accent I couldn't place. I laughed. "It depends on the family. Mine? Yeah, always like that." He held out his hand. "David." I shook it. "Marcus." We chatted for about 15 minutes about random things. He was funny, wry, and made insightful comments about the people around him. He didn't seem like any of my parents' boring, rich friends. That's when Jonathan appeared. He was visibly drunk, a glass of whiskey in his hand, his tie loosened. "Marcus, what a surprise to see you talking to someone. You usually stand in the corner like a piece of furniture." He laughed out loud. David looked at me with raised eyebrows. I took a deep breath. "Jonathan, now's not the time." But he completely ignored me. "Isn't it the time?" "Man, it's never the time with you. You never do anything interesting in life." People around me started paying attention. Jonathan was speaking too loudly. "Do you know what my brother's problem is?" He turned to David. "He's 32 years old and has achieved absolutely nothing. He's worked the same job for 10 years, rents, has no girlfriend, and has no ambition. He's pathetic." I felt my stomach tighten. David stood completely still, watching everything. My father approached, but instead of defending me, he made the situation worse. "Jonathan, stop it. Your brother does the best he can. He does the best he can." As if I were limited, incapable. Jonathan continued, "Dad, he's an embarrassment to our family. Look at him. Look at me. The difference is stark." He pointed to himself, as if he were a work of art. "I built a career. I brought pride to the sterling name. Him? He's just the brother who didn't make it." The room fell silent. Even the band stopped playing. 200 people stared at me, waiting for my reaction. I could feel the heat rising up my neck, the humiliation searing my skin. But before I could say anything, David set his glass down on the bar and took 2 steps toward Jonathan. David faced Jonathan with an expression I can only describe as surgical. He wasn't angry. He wasn't nervous. He was completely in control. "Are you Jonathan Sterling?" My brother blinked, confused by the intervention. "Yes, that's me. Who are you?" David smiled slightly. "My name is David Chen. You may be familiar with my company, Tech Vision Industries." Jonathan's face changed instantly. He recognized the name. Everyone in the tech industry knew Tech Vision. It was one of the largest innovation companies in the United States. Yes, of course. It's an honor, Mr. Chen." His voice changed completely, becoming submissive, almost fawning. David nodded. "Interesting. So you know my company is worth approximately $8 billion, correct?" Jonathan swallowed. "Yes, sir," David continued, with that same disconcerting calm. "And you should also know that we just closed a $350 million strategic partnership with a clean tech startup here in Boston, right?" Jonathan frowned. "I didn't know the details." David looked at me, then back at Jonathan. "The startup is called Energy AI Solutions, and the founder and CEO of that company is your brother, Marcus Sterling." The already existing silence grew even heavier. I could hear my own heartbeat. Jonathan looked at me as if he were seeing a ghost. "What? This isn't... Marcus, what's this all about?" I took a deep breath. I'd planned to tell my family another way, but now there was no turning back. Over the past 5 years, I've developed an AI system for energy optimization. I filed the patents, ran the tests, built a company. And yes, I closed a deal with Tech Vision 2 weeks ago. My father stepped forward, completely stunned. $350 million? Marcus, is that true? David answered for me. It's true. And to be more precise, the deal includes $250 million in initial investment, plus $100 million in equity. Marcus retains 40% of the company and takes over as Vice President of Innovation at Tech Vision, earning a salary of $2.5 million per year. Jonathan's legs felt like they'd turned to jelly. Caroline, his wife, was open-mouthed. My mother had her hand over her mouth. The entire party was completely paralyzed. "So, Jonathan," David continued, his tone carrying a crushing weight, "when you said your brother has achieved absolutely nothing in life, were you referring to the fact that he single-handedly built a technology that will revolutionize the energy industry and generated more financial value in the last 5 years than you will in your entire lifetime?" Jonathan tried to speak, but the words just wouldn't come. David wasn't finished. "I personally reviewed Marcus's work for 6 months before approving this investment. I've met hundreds of entrepreneurs, MIT PhDs, Silicon Valley executives, and I can say with absolute certainty that Marcus Sterling is one of the most brilliant engineers I've ever encountered. So your assessment of him as a failure makes me seriously question your judgment." My brother blushed, not with embarrassment, but with anger. He couldn't process the fact that I, the invisible brother, had achieved something he never could. "You hid this from everyone. Why? To embarrass us?" I finally found my voice. "I didn't hide it to embarrass anyone, Jonathan. I hid it because I knew exactly how you would react. You would try to control, interfere, or take credit. So I worked alone." Jonathan was visibly out of control. He threw his whiskey glass on the floor, the glass exploding into pieces. "This is ridiculous. You don't have the capacity to do something this big on your own." He pointed at me, his finger trembling. "Someone helped you. Someone financed you. You stole this idea from someone." David crossed his arms. "Be careful with your accusations, Jonathan. Slander can have very serious legal consequences, especially when directed at the CEO of a company valued at hundreds of millions." My father tried to intervene. "Jonathan, calm down. We'll talk about this as a family later." But Jonathan was completely lost. "As a family? This family is a joke. He's never been a part of anything here. He's always been the odd one out, the weird one. And now he shows up out of nowhere saying he's a billionaire? I corrected. I'm not a billionaire, but I'll be very comfortable. Jonathan laughed. A bitter, desperate laugh. Comfortable. Did you hear that, Dad? $350 million and he'll be comfortable. Caroline tugged on Jonathan's arm. Honey, let's go. You've had too much to drink. But he wrenched her away. No, I want to understand. How did he manage this? Who does he know? What connections does he have? He turned to David. Mr. Chen, with all due respect, why would you invest in him? He has no business experience. He has no network. He has no... David cut him off. He has something you clearly don't. Humility, hard work, and an exceptional mind. Marcus spent the last 5 years sacrificing social life, comfort, and recognition to build something real. Meanwhile, you were worried about appearances. And appearances don't build companies, Jonathan. Substance does. David's words echoed through the room. Several people began to murmur. Some looked at Jonathan with contempt. Others looked at me with an admiration I'd never seen before. My grandmother, sitting at the head table, was smiling. She knew. Somehow she'd always known I had something inside me. My mother finally approached. Marcus, why didn't you tell us? Her voice was broken. I looked at her with a mixture of sadness and liberation. Because you never asked me what I was doing. You assumed I wasn't doing anything important. You ignored me at every family gathering, at every dinner, and every conversation. I was invisible to you. She started to cry. We didn't want to. We didn't know. I shook my head. You didn't want to know, it's different. I looked at my father, who was in complete shock. I tried to talk to you about my projects 3 years ago. You said I was wasting my time, remember? He opened his mouth, but couldn't answer. Jonathan took another step toward me, but David blocked his path. I suggest you go home. You've done enough damage for today. Jonathan glared at David. You're not my boss. David smiled. No, I'm not. But I'm in charge of 70% of your company. Jonathan's face went white. Jonathan froze. What are you talking about? David pulled his cell phone out of his pocket and showed him a screen. Sterling Imports, your import consulting company. TechVision bought a majority stake 8 months ago through one of our subsidiaries. You didn't know because you were so busy spending the money we injected to save your company from bankruptcy. I didn't know that. No one knew. Jonathan was growing paler by the second. That's not... You can't. David put away his phone. I can. And I can also review all the contracts and financial decisions you've made in the last few months. Some of them seem questionable. He paused. In fact, my legal department has already identified 3 transactions that could constitute embezzlement. My father stepped forward. Wait, embezzlement? Jonathan, what's going on? Jonathan was clearly panicked. It's nothing. He's bluffing. David shook his head. I never bluff in business matters. And to be clear, Mr. Sterling, your eldest son has been embezzling company funds for at least 6 months. Approximately $1.2 million has been transferred to offshore accounts in Panama. The room erupted in murmurs. My mother staggered and had to lean against a chair. Jonathan, is this true? He tried to deny it. It's a lie. He's making this up to destroy me. But his voice was cracking. I looked at David, confused. You knew this all along? David nodded. We discovered it during due diligence, but we didn't want to go public until we had all the evidence. Now we do. My father was visibly devastated. Why did you do this, Jonathan? Why did you steal from your own company? Jonathan finally broke down. He slumped in a chair, put his hands on his face, and began to cry. I was in debt. Huge debts. The Porsche, the house on Martha's Vineyard, the trips. I couldn't afford it. So I borrowed it. I was going to pay it back. Caroline dropped his hand in disgust. You told me everything was fine. You told me the company was doing well. Jonathan didn't respond. He was completely defeated. David continued, relentless. The problem, Jonathan, isn't just the theft. The problem is arrogance. You've built an image of success on the back of lies, debt, and now financial crimes. Meanwhile, your brother has built something real with his own hands. I felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction at finally being recognized. Sadness that my family was imploding in front of 200 people. My grandmother stood, supported by her nurse, and walked over to me. Marcus, I always knew you were special. You have your grandfather's heart. She looked at Jonathan with disappointment. And you, Jonathan, have your Uncle Edward's empty pride. And look where that got him. My Uncle Edward had died alone, broke, and friendless. after losing everything trying to keep up appearances. The comparison was brutal. My grandmother turned to me. "I have something to give you. Something your grandfather left." She signaled to her lawyer, who was at the back of the room. He approached with a folder. The lawyer opened the folder and took out an envelope. "Marcus Sterling, as specified in the will of Arthur Sterling, on the occasion of the 90th birthday of his wife Margaret Sterling, you will receive the inheritance reserved for the grandchild who demonstrates true merit and character." He opened the envelope and read, "The house on Cape Cod, valued at $4.5 million, plus a trust fund of $7 million, are hereby transferred in full to Marcus Sterling." I couldn't process it. Jonathan exploded again. "This is unfair. I'm the oldest son. I should get it." My grandmother turned to him, and for the first time in my life I saw her truly angry. "You don't deserve anything. Your grandfather knew exactly what kind of man you would become. That's why he put that clause in." The party ended there. People began to leave, some quickly greeting my grandmother, others looking at me with curiosity and respect. Jonathan was escorted out by club security after trying to break a table. Caroline filed for divorce that same night, I later learned. My parents sat there, completely broken, trying to process everything. I talked to David for a few more minutes. "Why did you do that?" I asked. "You didn't have to defend me like that." He smiled. "Marcus, I built an $8 billion company. Do you think I got here without seeing people like your brother? Men who value appearance over substance, who lie, who steal credit from others? I hate those kinds of people." He placed his hand on my shoulder. "You remind me of myself 30 years ago. Working alone with no support, everyone doubting me. When I discovered what you were building, it wasn't just about the investment, it was about justice. You deserve to be recognized for your work." I felt tears well up in my eyes, but I held them back. "Thank you. Seriously, you have no idea what this means." My grandmother called out to me before leaving. "Marcus, I've always known. Your grandfather knew too. That's why he prepared everything. He said, 'A real man doesn't need to shout to be heard. He works until his actions speak for him.'" She kissed my forehead. "You're the pride of the family. Don't forget that." I hugged her for a long time. My father approached, hesitant. "Marcus, I don't know what to say." I looked at him. "Dad, you've had 32 years to really know me. But you've always chosen Jonathan. You've always chosen image over reality." He shook his head. "We made mistakes." "I know we made mistakes." I sighed. "I'm not cutting you out of my life, but things will be different from now on. I won't accept being treated as less anymore." My mother came over too, still crying. "Can we start over? Can we be a real family?" I thought for a moment. "That's up to you, not me. I've done my part. I've built my life. Now you need to decide what kind of family you want to be." She nodded, unable to say anything else. I left the club around midnight. The parking lot was nearly empty. I got into my car, a 2018 Honda Civic I'd driven for years, and sat in silence for a few minutes. Everything had changed in a matter of hours. Humiliation became triumph. The invisible became protagonist. The failure became CEO. I started the car and began driving home. My phone rang. It was a text from David. Monday, 9 a.m. "Let's start changing the world." I smiled. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. 3 months have passed since that night. Jonathan was indicted for financial fraud and is free while the case unfolds. He lost his company, his home, his marriage, and his reputation. My parents have tried to get closer a few times, but there's still a huge distance between us. Maybe things will improve with time. Maybe not. I've learned that family isn't about blood. It's about respect, support, and recognition. Energy AI Solutions officially launched last week. We have contracts with 12 major companies and projected revenues of $400 million in the first year. David included me in TechVision's strategic decisions, and for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm building something that will last. My grandmother comes to visit me every Sunday for lunch. She says she can finally die in peace knowing that my grandfather's legacy is in good hands. I still drive the same Honda Civic. I still live in the same rented apartment. Not because I can't afford better things, but because I've learned that real value isn't in appearances. It's in waking up every day knowing you built something with your own hands, that you owe nothing to anyone, and that you don't need to shout to be heard. True success is silent until it needs to speak, and when it speaks, the whole world listens. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more like it, please subscribe to the channel. It would be an honor to have you here.